Let's get it. This is Life's Essential Ingredients with Jeff and a Mike, where we hope to inform, inspire, and transform lives, one essential ingredient at a time. Welcome to the show. Listeners, here we go. I'm back flying solo today, but so excited for this episode. It's gonna, our show intro, and Wayne, thanks for that again. But this show is created to inform, inspire, and transform lives. And our guest is definitely going to do that today. And if you're a first-time listener, first of all, thanks for tuning in. This podcast is part of a nonprofit called C4 Leaders, and we are headquartered in Northern California. And we're the only nonprofit to utilize the pizza making process to create space for our companions to be seen, heard, and loved. We also write children's books, obviously host this show, and use the most amazing handmade, hand-tossed sourdough pizza to bring out the best in each other. If you're interested in checking out that work, go to pizzadays, DAYS.org to support the work that we're doing. So I can't believe it. We are season 4 now. And Mike and I started this during COVID as a way to connect and try to just get a positive message out and help people focus on what's essential in their life. And those people were always Mike and I. And so we do have a YouTube site that this show is recorded on, but my head is frequently down during the episodes, and I'm taking pages and pages of notes. And so I've really grown a lot from all of our guests, and I know Darryl is going to help me grow today. And so about our guest, the first thing I always like to start with is where you can find him. And Darryl's best website is thefamilyrecoverycoach.com. And again, we have Darryl Rodgers coming from Cary, North Carolina. So about our guest, Renewed Hope Family Recovery Coaching was established in 2018 and believes that every parent deserves to see their child grow up and be who they were created to be. Darryl Rodgers is the founder who shares his wisdom as a speaker, author, and family recovery coach. Darryl specializes in working with parents of children struggling with substance use disorder. Darryl also serves on the state advisory board of North Carolina Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Darryl and his wife, Kim, have been married for 31 years, are the proud parents of 2 boys, Justin and Chase. Darryl, thanks for sharing your many gifts with the world and for having the courage to take your darkest day and use it as a source of light. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jeff. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Yeah. So, Darryl, you're a first-time guest, and listeners, if you're first time, I've always used this thought of the day as a way to just kind of get us grounded. And it's a quote that I pick after researching the guest. And Darryl, here is yours, and it's from Helen Keller. And here it is: alone, we can do so little. Together, we can do so much. Why would I pick that one for you?
Wow, that's a great one. That's a great one for me. And I'll tell you why. I work with parents who have a son or daughter, a child. I usually use the term son or daughter because I want to distinguish that this is usually an older teenager or adult child who is struggling with drug or alcohol addiction. And a lot of times, there's a lot of stigma around addiction. So parents feel very alone when dealing with this because a lot of times they don't have friends or family members who understand what they're going through. And they feel very alone, very isolated. And one of the things I do is I facilitate a peer support group for parents. Now, that particular peer support group is free for people to attend. And I hear people after they've been in that support group for just a little while say things like, man, I sure am glad I came to this group because I felt so alone before I came here. And it's good to know that I'm not in this battle alone. There are other people going through the same thing who understand me and understand what I'm going through.
And powerful. Yeah, just believe in that quote so much, and then definitely appreciate that you've created this space for people to come in. It kind of goes along with our mission. We try and do the same in a different way, but create space for people to be seen, heard, and loved. And I think we're just living in a world where trying to find those little corners of our community are harder and harder to find. And it takes people to have the courage like you to create that space so we can all, that's what everybody wants, in my opinion, just to be seen, heard, and loved, and to know that our time here means something. And then also on the flip side, to know when we're struggling, that there is somebody else together that can help me get back and get grounded to building on creating whatever life that we're trying to create. So yeah, no, I've gone on to your website, and we're going to get into this stuff throughout the show. But I love all the resources that you've created to allow parents ideas and knowledge and wisdom to not feel alone, so they can go on and try and do what they can. Back to the first line that I read, to every parent deserves to see their child grow up and be who they were created to be. And that just takes a community.
Yeah. I would agree with that. The things that those parents, some of the other things that happen in that peer support group is that parents who've been on the journey longer know about a lot of other resources that they can share, and they can, with the parents who are newer to the group. So that's just one more way that they help each other, that they grow together. Definitely learn from each other and support each other. So yeah, definitely there's a lot of power in people coming together and working together to solve problems.
All right, let's get in. So this is a take the question any which way you like. We're going to take a couple steps back because I like the listeners to get to know our guests. And what was life like growing up for you? And you can take any period of that.
It was really, really interesting. I had a great childhood. My father was a Southern Baptist preacher, and a really people person, loved people. And, he had a degree in psychology, so he did a lot of counseling people. And my mother was a high school secretary, and I couldn't get away with anything. Not that I wanted to do anything, but she saw everything I did or heard about everything I did pretty much in school. So, we lived in the country, rural area, farm country in South Carolina. And yeah, I had friends, but it took a little work to get up with my friends, to get together with my friends, because they were miles away. And so I spent a lot of time by myself out in the woods. There were crop fields all around our house. There was a cow pasture on one side and crops on the other. And but you go back past the fields a little way, there was a little stream there and a lot of woods. And so I would just spend a lot of time by myself, and sometimes with my dog, my sidekick, my dog back there, just exploring those woods. And my dad loved to bass fish in farm ponds, and being the preacher, he got a lot of invitations to all of the local farm ponds. So we did a lot of bass fishing from his boat in those ponds, and just a lot of time, a lot of father-son time bonding there. And And yeah, those are great memories, really great memories.
It sounds like it. And I just, like I told you, I'm taking notes the whole time. And as you're sharing that, and thanks for sharing that, but as you're sharing your story and your childhood, I just wrote down peaceful.
Oh, very, very much so.
Gosh.
Very, very, very peaceful. And, I can just remember times when, if there was any kind of, I was upset about anything, or disappointed or whatever, um, I would just go for a walk out there in the woods, and it's just quiet, and just get off by myself. And it was just me and God, right? And the animals, the wildlife. And, it was a great way. It was great therapy, I would say. So yeah, that's a big thing. And I forgot to mention to you earlier that we're we're in town right now. And with this town, when we moved here, I had no intention of staying here over 30 years. And I thought I would be here a few years and then move on. But um, the town has grown from about 40,000 to about 170,000 since we've been here. And we're building a house. We're moving out to the country. I bought about 7 acres out in the country, and we're building a house, and we'll be moving in probably middle of February, starting the moving process. So, and it's peaceful. It's very peaceful as I'm kind of getting back to my roots.
Yeah, yeah, no. And I just, as you're sharing that, I just put nature as God's therapy, and life gets moving so fast. And this show is not about religion, but I'm definitely a believer and grew up Catholic, and know when we can get out into nature and you can kind of just breathe and just realize all that God has created for us. Yeah, it just can put you in such a different space, and hopefully take away some of the challenges that you have that our brain is not letting us maybe see in the correct way, and allow us to get our stress levels down, and then be able to think a little bit different, whether that thinking results in me, reaching out to someone like you that can help me with some of the challenges that I have, me just slowing life down to realize that I have things inside me that I can use to solve whatever challenge I have. But I just feel like life is moving faster and faster, and we're a little bit more on our devices and not getting out as much. And so, yeah, what a beautiful picture that you painted for me and the rest of the listeners on just being out in the beautiful country that we have. So my next question, the show is called Life's Essential Ingredients. And, not to get too personal with you, but I always like the listeners again to know, Darryl, you're doing a lot of great things and giving of yourself and serving so many people. And that is your purpose. And my question is, what are those essential ingredients that you personally have in your life that you use on the daily that allows you to go out and do the important work that you do? And I don't want to use the word routine, but whatever it is that you have that's key, that gives you the strength and courage to do what you do.
Well, I am a Christian, and I have a very deep faith, and that is the foundation for me personally. It really, I don't know how anyone can get through what we've been through. We lost our son, our oldest son, in 2014 in a wreck. And I don't know how anyone gets through the loss of a child like that kind of a tragic loss without some type of deep faith. And for me, it's very personal. I don't see it as religion, without going too far down this, because I don't want to impose my beliefs on other people. I'm certainly open to anyone that has questions to answering those questions. But I would just say it's very personal for me. I see it as a relationship versus religion, a relationship with God. And whereas I think religion to me is based a lot around having certain rituals or certain rules, and I don't see it that way. That's not, it's a relationship with God.
So how do you tap into that? I'm going to put a little bit of pressure on you then. If
Okay, okay.
that is your foundation, and you're waking up each day, how
Yep.
you tap into that relationship for someone that's listening, that is just struggling and is lost and is not taking, exactly, hey, Darryl is saying this, and this, but no, this is what works for Darryl. And could it perhaps be an ingredient that you could add to your life to build a relationship, with whoever it is that they serve?
Yeah. I would say, well, first of all, I have a morning routine. And are you familiar with the Miracle Morning?
I'm not.
Yeah, it's a book written by Hal Elrod, and it has nothing to do with Christianity or religion or any of that. But I sort of have adapted his Miracle Morning routine to I've put in I've adapted it into my own belief system. In other words, or I've put my belief system. I'm sort of using his routine, but so I could give you an example. Um, the Miracle Morning routine consists of it's called SAVERS. The acronym is SAVERS, SAVERS. So that's silence or meditation is the first S. Affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing or journaling. And so I go through that routine pretty much every morning. And for me right now, the meditation is I do some breathing exercises and just kind of clear my mind and get still and quiet. And then I go through, read some positive affirmations. Those affirmations for me are scripture verses. That these are very important scripture verses to me that I read over and over that are very affirming to me. And then I have a little visualization exercise that I do, and then I do a little physical exercise. Then it's usually like 10 minutes, high intensity interval training. I do lift weights later in the day, depending on, I'm out of my routine a little bit right now with the new year. I haven't gotten back into the lifting, um, but I'm pretty steady. I have been over the course of my life with the lifting. And so then the reading is the Bible for me. I do have a morning devotion every morning where I read the Bible, and then journaling. And I'm not as good about doing the journaling. I go through, phases where I journal more than other times. But, it's really about that prayer time in the morning, the Bible, the meditation. I do pray in the morning, but as things come up during the day, there's a scripture verse that talks about praying without ceasing. And that's kind of how I see it. As things pop up, I'm having a conversation with God about, okay, what's going on with this? And am I on the right track here? And if I'm not, correct me, or I need help with this. Can you help me with this? And it's not all about me. I do have, prayer requests from friends and family, and there's people that maybe haven't made a request that I have on my mind that and then every night before I go to bed. So there's prayer without ceasing. I think it's just like if you had a best friend with you that you have a relationship with and you're sharing things with them, except this best friend can help you solve problems. And this best friend is really I see it as my heavenly father. And my earthly father, I happen to have been blessed with a really good father. And I know everyone hasn't had that experience, and I'm very fortunate and very blessed to have had that. But I will just say he wasn't perfect. He had his things too. But my heavenly father's perfect, and so Whatever issues I have, I can share with him, and I know that he's got my back.
Mm. Darryl, if you were right in front of me, don't take this the wrong way, but I might smack you around a little bit because you weren't going to share that. And I had to dig deeper and deeper and deeper. And I knew there was just something inside me said, no, Darryl's holding out.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And so that's powerful. You know what? Even if the listeners just tune out right now after this, I mean, they're already getting some ingredient that they can maybe take a step back from and say, hey, do I want to take one of those things that Darryl has been doing for a good chunk of his life and has put himself in a position to be able to share his gift with the world. And I think one of the powerful things that I took out of your routine was the power of reflection.
Oh, yeah.
Having that voice in your head, and then the relationship in your case with God, to be able to reflect and take a step back, go back to when you're a little kid, getting out in nature of just allowing everything just to be at peace, and say, okay, what direction do I need to go to be able to, deal with what I have to deal with? Powerful. So thank you so much for sharing that. And obviously I'm not going to smack you around. You're lifting and you knock me around a little bit. But let's get into your expertise a little bit. And I want to just start off, this nonprofit is called C4 Leaders. And our 4 C's are communication, chemistry, consistency, and creativity. But my question for you is, how vital is communication in the role of parent and child?
Oh my gosh, it's just it's a 10.5 out of 10, right? It's just, communication is so vital. And when parents are having issues with children, with the child's behavior, what I've found is that we all tend to try to control over other human beings. Even your own child is an illusion. So what you want, and what happens is when you try to control, you get very frustrated because you cannot control their human being, and they get frustrated at your attempts to control them. So what you want to do is use influence instead, and learn how to use positive influence. And it takes a little mind shift to be able to do that. But it's so important, and it makes such a big difference in the outcome. And I find this very important in the parents that I work with who have a child in active addiction, because of the fear that the parents have of what could happen to their child. They have really bad control issues most of the time. We call it codependency. There's one term you can use for it. Enabling behaviors, but they're constantly trying to control the situation, and their intentions are good, but it ends up making the situation worse. It keeps them stuck and their child stuck in the situation they're in. A lot of times the child cannot break away from their addiction. They can't get into recovery because of the interference of the parent. The parent is keeping them stuck. And in most cases, I would say it's not the parent's fault that the child is battling addiction. There's so many different factors that come into play that lead a person into that lifestyle, and that they become addicted to drugs or alcohol. Most of the time, the parents are not at fault at all, but they have a responsibility in the recovery process of their child. But that responsibility is really working on themselves And that's what's so hard because they think I need to fix my child problem or they're going to die from an overdose or a wreck or some other drug related issue, and they may. But you don't have any control over that. And your best chance of getting them into recovery or helping them get into recovery is to learn to work on yourself, get stronger, and be a better communicator and influencer. So it's very hard once they get into that fear mindset to break that and help them flip that switch.
You said so much right there. And I'm just imagining if I'm a listener and I hear what you're sharing and I say, whoa, that's me. What step could a listener take if their child is struggling with addiction right now? And again, they feel like they're trying to help, but they're enabling because they're so deep and they're living in the fear of what you said, which all this just makes so much sense, of how we can get into that space as parents. And you said, hey, use positive influence and work on themselves. But how do you help them take that first step?
Well, the peer support group is really instrumental. But aside from that, the first thing really is to help parents. There's some things that they can do to help them manage their emotions better. So if their emotions are out of control, they're going to engage in enabling and rescuing behaviors. So some of the things that they can do, first of all, I like for them to sit down and write down their vision for the next 5 years. And not, when they write down their vision for the next 5 years, they can include their child in that who's struggling with the addiction, but it doesn't need to be all wrapped around their child. It needs to be their vision for their life. What are they doing, in terms of career or retirement or where they're going to live, what their lifestyle is going to look like. Do they want to travel, things like that, vacations. And they really need to dream a little bit and get their dream back because a lot of them have lost that dream because the only thing they can think about almost 24/7 is my child is going to die. And how can I keep my child alive? And they really need to switch the gears back to what is their vision for their life and then set goals based on that. That's really the first step. And then as part of that vision, somewhere along the way, I talked about exercise earlier. They need to do some exercise. And not everybody, I've been lifting weights my whole life. That's not going to be for everybody, but everybody can go for a walk. And we talked about earlier about nature, about how, important it is to get out there and just get the fresh air and the sunshine and notice the things as you walk, like the squirrels and the birds and all of that. But you're getting that exercise in too, which there's just so many other benefits there that help people get control of their stress. So it's a good start is exercise, a really good start. If they can work it in some sort of a hobby, and it doesn't have to be very time consuming. It doesn't have to be very expensive. In fact, it shouldn't be, but some sort of a simple hobby, particularly if they can find one where they use their hands to create something. They've done scientific studies on this, that it releases doing that releases a cocktail of positive neurochemicals. So it can help combat the stress or depression that they may be dealing with. So we call that self-care, and I like for parents to think about it like if you're on an airplane and the oxygen mask drop and your child's right next to you. They tell you, put your oxygen mask on first before you help anybody else. Because if you don't, you're not going to be any good either. So this is sort of the same concept.
I love it. And you're not aware, but I'm a nurse is what I've done as a profession for 20.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, I had already written down as you were talking, I was like, that's self-care, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I love it. But if I'm going to be a skeptic now, just to be devil's advocate, you know, your child, the listeners, hey, that's great, Darryl. But my child is just struggling with this addiction. I still have this fear, and yeah, I'm taking care of myself and everything. But my child is continuing to use, and I don't feel like I feel like I'm turning my back on my child.
Yeah.
Because I'm not focused on them, and I get, and obviously you're the expert, but talk to that listener that's struggling right now a little bit with this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to sometimes to help parents flip that switch so that they understand that the best thing that they, number one, don't have any control. And the more attempts they make at control, the more they're going to push their child in the wrong direction unintentionally. And number two, the best opportunity their child has at recovery is when they step into their own self-care, when the parent steps into their own self-care. Ironically, I know it seems counterintuitive to parenting, to parents, but that's what they need to do. And the other thing I didn't mention to you that is not on my website yet because I'm relatively new at this, but I'm an interventionist now, and I'm connected to a group of other interventionists, and so sometimes parents need help in getting their child into treatment, but part of that process is setting healthy boundaries. So when an interventionist comes in, one of the first things they do is, first they've usually spent some time with the family in advance of doing an intervention, and gotten to know the family and all the family dynamics. And then you come in, and one of the first things you do is help the parents set healthy boundaries with their child. And in a lot of cases, one example might be that the child is an adult child, but still living at home and using drugs right in the home. It's like, well, you're going to offer them an opportunity to go to treatment. And interventions are different than what most people think. It's not as confrontational as what people think. It's not everybody's ganging up on this person to tell them how terrible they are. That's not how it is. It's very loving. It's done in a very loving way, and they're offered an opportunity to go to treatment, but there has to be some healthy boundaries there. As an adult living at home with your parents that's not acceptable. You have to grow up and get your own place. So you go to treatment, or pack your bags. And it sounds harsh, but it's the best thing for them in that moment. And most of them will there'll be a little pushback, but most of them will opt for treatment and given those alternatives.
Yeah, really, when you explain it in the way that you just did, it's boils down to, take care of yourself, do the things that you can do to allow you to think more clearly, tap into the resources that perhaps are in your community or online, or finding, other resources, whether it be through the church or other groups. And then once you can get that step, set your boundaries. And it's either get the help or get out, which just sounds so harsh, but it does obviously make sense and is the best way to go.
Well, there's always the an olive branch extended there. Like, if they choose the option of moving out, there's always, what, we love you, we're here for you, but we're not going to help you in ways that are unhealthy for you and unhealthy for us. And if you decide you want to accept the kind of help that we're willing to offer, which is treatment, then let us know, and we'll still make this happen. All you have to do is let us know. And the boundaries, healthy boundaries, are important to every relationship. It becomes unhealthy when parents, out of that fear, begin to do things for their adult child. I'll say adult child in this situation. Sometimes it could be a teenager, but older teen. You have a responsibility up until they're 18. But when parents are doing things for their child that child could be and should be doing for themselves, that they're capable of doing for themselves, that's not healthy. And so we need to teach them how to set those boundaries. But going back to what you asked about earlier, the emotions prevent them from setting and maintaining those healthy boundaries. So that's why it's so important to dive into all the things that are going to help them get their emotions under control.
Yeah, and listeners, we're talking with Darryl Rodgers and his website, thefamilyrecoverycoach.com. And unfortunately, Darryl, if you're just kind of tuning in a little bit late and jumping through this, he's gone through everything that he's sharing, and I would love for you, I know on your website, and I just appreciate everything that you're doing, but you have, and I haven't had time to look at it, but other than glancing at your website, but a life half lived. And I was wondering if you could share to put this, I think it's a good time. I think it will put everything that you're saying into context. And now you've mentioned it briefly, but talk about that piece.
Yeah. So I'm one of those parents that I was describing. I've made all of the mistakes that I'm talking about. And that's why I feel like I'm in a good position to be able to help other parents because I have come through it. Unfortunately, it didn't work out good for me because I still had some lessons to learn, and I learned them after the fact, a lot of those, unfortunately. And when I say that, I could have done everything right and it may have still turned out the same way. But certainly, in hindsight now, I'm in a place where I can look back and go, oh, I could have done this better. I could have done that better. And I can share that with parents. And I want to do that because I don't want them to go through some of the things we've been through. It was in 2014. Our oldest son, Chase, so both of our boys are 7 years apart, and both Eagle Scouts, both high school athletes, college athletes. And unfortunately, Chase, when he got to college, began abusing drugs and alcohol and dropped out pretty early on, came back home, gravitated to a rough crowd at home. And he was just spiraling out of control. And we did have an intervention for him here at our house. I always say this was one of the best decisions I made because it did result in him going to treatment. And he did get better, but he relapsed. Now, the next mistake that I made was I let him move back in with us. He got himself kicked out of a halfway house that he was in, and I let him move back in. And I really believe that contributed to his relapse because I was still, doing things to control or to making attempts to control the situation. I was still, had a lot of fear around everything. And I was working on it. I was beginning to realize that I was part of the problem and I was trying to correct that. But then in May the 29th of 2014, he died in a drug-impaired wreck. It was his car. And what's ironic about it is that he came to me just probably a few days before and said, "Hey, Dad," maybe a week before, and he said, "Hey, Dad, I'm moving back to Florida, back to the area where I was in treatment because I'm hanging around a rough crowd again here. I'm headed in a bad direction. I know I need to kind of get away from these people, but I don't really know how to do it except to move." So he said, "I've taken a job transfer to Florida. I'm going back down there," and told me when he was planning to leave and all. And I told my wife, Kim, and Anyway, Chase was supposed to come by and have a meal with us before he left for Florida, and he didn't show up. And we were just all kind of sitting around waiting. And I had a phone call from a friend. So I go out in the front yard to have my phone conversation. And the police cruiser shows up pulls up to the curb. Police officer came up my driveway, and I ended my phone conversation and went to meet the officer. And that's where he told me that Chase had died in a wreck. And it was his car. It had belonged to my dad at one time. Ironically, there was still and I was unaware of this, but one of my dad's Bibles with his sermon notes was still in the trunk. But there apparently been a big going away party the night before, and Chase, and a lot of his friends all consumed all kinds of drugs and alcohol at this party, from what I was told. And I would say that was hearsay, but I'm pretty sure it's accurate. I can't confirm that piece of the story, but I'm pretty sure it's accurate. And then the next morning, they said they woke up, feeling hungover. So they decided to go to a park near home and all smoke some marijuana there, thinking that would help them cope with their nausea. But then he allowed this young lady, who was a girl that he had dated at one time, to get behind the wheel of his car. She had smoked with him. He got in the front passenger seat of his own car, and then another kid got in the back seat, and they left that park and ended up out on I-40 headed eastbound, right into rush hour traffic. And they only made it a few miles before she lost control of his car in a curve and left the road, struck a tree, and he died at the scene. And then the other two survived. They were transported to the hospital right away with serious injuries. And then 7 months later, this is the real shocker of the story, is that the driver took her own life. There was a fire that broke out in her apartment. She apparently set the fire. She poured the fire chief believes that she poured gasoline all over the floor of the apartment and stood in the middle of it and ignited it. So she died in the hospital the next day from her burns. So, we were just kind of getting over. You never get over losing a child. We were getting over the initial trauma to some extent of losing Chase. Losing a child is something when, it goes with you the rest of your life. And then I can tell you, my wife particularly is very emotional anytime we get close to holidays or, birthdays, things like that. So, but anyway, then we're attending, 7 months later, this girl's funeral. She and we had gotten to know her mother, really nice lady. But I know I had another point I wanted to make about that. I kind of lost my train of thought there. But anyway, just a really devastating. There's a big ripple effect. A lot of people were impacted by the choices that were made. And, I've just tried to take the pain from that to the extent possible. And I didn't know anything else to do with it, and other than try to turn it into something positive. And that's been very healing for me. And I get a lot of good feedback from other people when I talk to people and when I share the story. And it has been healing. I know what I was going to say. She was just a few weeks away from what would have been her first court appearance, and so I'm sure she was dealing with some of the, I never really got to talk to her about this, but I'm sure it really bothered her, the role that she played in Chase's death. It was his car. He was the oldest one there. I feel like the lion's share of the responsibility was on him. But, she did play a role in his death, and apparently, she was distraught over that. So anyway, really, really a tragic ending to the story, but we're all doing well. We're all doing well as a family. And we miss Chase every single minute of every day. But, and, he goes with me in my heart. That picture on the cover of that book is his. Um, that's a self-portrait, and it's just a testament to his creativity. That picture is really striking. I know I had another point I wanted to make too along those lines. I don't want to ramble too much here, but um, yeah, just has been quite an experience. And we've just had an outpouring of love from other people that is in support, and that has it's really helped me to grow spiritually and personally, to be able to unfortunately have to deal with this pain of this absence of Chase. I know what the other thing I was going to say was, now kind of jumping tracks a little bit, but you mentioned chemistry earlier, and in your question, our youngest son, Justin, is doing extremely well, and he's a chemistry major, graduated with a chemistry degree, played football all the way through college, and is pursuing a chemistry PhD now. So we're really proud of him. Surrounds himself with good kids and with other good people, and my relationship with him has really grown, really improved as I learned to back off, and let him, based on the things I went through with Chase, and let him make mistakes and just stand back and not say anything. Sometimes I had to really bite my tongue, but he has really blossomed and loves spending quality time with me and with his mom, and so yeah, really, really close with him now.
I don't even know where to go with everything that you just shared, other than, first of all, just, sorry for your loss and all that you and your family have gone through. Thank you for sharing your strength and turning your pain into your purpose. And then I want to read a quote again. Alone, we can do so little. Together, we can do so much. And you've just taken that, and instead of just turning in, to yourself, you've allowed yourself, I'm sure after lots of hard work and questioning and letting go, to reach out and help so many people, which is amazing, the work that you're doing and the resources that you provide, and I want to, on your website, it says discover, grow, and let go.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's that all about?
I've actually added a couple of things to that now. And now it is discover, decide, grow, create, and let go. So I call it your family recovery roadmap is what I call it. And the discover part of that is where you discover, as a parent, you discover your future vision. Your first discovery is the roadmap. You look at the roadmap, you kind of get an overview of this roadmap, and I have an image that depicts it. But then you discover your future vision, begin working on your goals, setting your goals to help you achieve that vision. And I work with parents on this. Then you make and implement important decisions about your son or your daughter battling addiction. And I will help you with that. And sometimes that's an intervention. Sometimes it's it could be a lot of other things, but there's some usually crucial decisions that need to get made. The next step is grow. And grow is just creating and implementing a plan for new healthy habits. Really, it's about growing spiritually, personally, You could, some of those habits could include exercise or prayer, meditation, things like that. Under create, we help you create and establish healthy boundaries, written healthy boundaries. And we could help you with a hobby, just kind of get you going in the right direction. And all of this has accountability built into it to help the parents stay on track. And then the letting go, it's about just letting go of those attempts to control, letting go of the fear, letting go of the any enabling or rescuing behaviors. And I like to think of it like an archer letting go of an arrow, and your child is the arrow. You draw the arrow back, you aim it at that target of hoping the child's going to have a great future, and then you have to let go. And once you release the arrow, it's in God's hands. And that's the way I look at it. You've got all these years to prepare, but then you have to let go.
I love it. I love it. It's such a good roadmap for coming up with a plan to do. And I'm going to go back to your opening line here, for every parent to see their child grow up and be who they were created to be. I should have asked this early on, but we're just working backwards. And then I'm going to be mindful. I can't even realize we've been going almost an hour now.
I know.
Be respectful of your time. So I appreciate you, but you have so much wisdom to share. But if people are listening in and they're just realizing their child, their behavior is different. They don't know what's going on, but they're different. One, this is a two-part question. One, what are the signs that your child might be using a substance? And then two, what would be, a way for the parent to intervene and, do it in the safest, healthiest way?
Yeah. Well, a lot goes back to what kind of ground rules you've established as they were growing up, and what kind of relationship you've established. Do they feel comfortable coming to you, the parent, or will they be willing to open up to you? I know my son would never have told me he was using, and the thing is that a lot of the signs and symptoms can be very easily confused with what teenagers go through anyway. Just trying to figure life out, and you've got all the hormones raging and everything else. So, but yeah, if you see sudden drop in grades, loss of interest in friendships, isolation sometimes, or all of a sudden new friends, and those new friends don't look the same as the old friends, different group that they're hanging out with, if they're becoming more rebellious at home, lost interest in things, athletics or things like that. Those are tips, but I would say parents have to go with their gut on this, a lot. So if they think something's wrong, if they think something's off, they're probably right most of the time. But you don't want to, I say it like this, don't freak out. Because if you come to your child and you just start screaming at them, and let's say you're accusing them, that's not going to go over well. And they're just going to put up a wall. So you want to be, first go back to that emotional control, get yourself under control, make sure that you're very measured, and that you create an open environment where they feel as comfortable sharing as possible. But if you have to, as a parent of a teenager that's under 18, Or if they're living in your house, you really have a responsibility to check some things, maybe go to their room and start looking. There is information out there that can help you identify drug paraphernalia. I would say check with Top Cop. There's a guy, I mean, not Top Cop, Tall Cop. There's a guy named Tall Cop. You can Google him, Jermaine Galloway. He's got some really good information on that kind of stuff. But yeah, and if you, like I said, if you identify that they're doing drugs, or even if you can't identify it 100%, but you think they are, you need to take some measures to try. If it's urinalysis, whatever you have to do to find out. But you're probably right. If you think it's going on, it's probably been going on longer than you think.
Thanks for those tips. Again, thefamilyrecoverycoach.com. And we're getting ready to wrap this up, but I just wanted to make sure the listeners, if you do have a child or know of somebody that's struggling, Darryl's just a great resource. He's got a free masterclass. He's got other online courses for parents with addicted children. He's got, books that are available. So definitely, again, check out his site, thefamilyrecoverycoach.com. And Darryl, we're at the last question, and it's this legacy quote that I like to use, and it's from John Alston. It's the only thing you take with you when you're gone is what you leave behind. And let's fast forward 40 years or so for you, and you're on your deathbed. You're surrounded by the people that have been instrumental and essential in your life, and you're getting ready to take your last breath. What is it that you want people to carry with them as you get ready to go home?
Wow. Always have love in your heart for your fellow man. When I say fellow man, fellow human, because you don't know what they're going through. You don't know what they've been through. I used to be very judgmental of people who were battling addiction. And if you read my book, you'll see that. But I didn't understand most of them are dealing with some kind of trauma or something that happened in their life that they're struggling with. There's something going on that they're struggling with, and that's led them down that path. So just love everybody and be, I don't want to use the word tolerant, but just be loving and be understanding of people, and try to meet them where they are.
That's beautiful. Again, listeners, Darryl Rodgers, familyrecoverycoach.com. My Pasho usually gets us out, but Darryl, thank you so much for being an incredible guest and again, doing the important work that you're doing. And listeners, boom, baby, that just happened. We're out.